Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions, where real emotions meet the stories no one dares to say out loud. Let's begin. She leaned over the bar, laughing. That kind of laugh. The one I hadn't heard in years. Not in our home, not around me. Not even when I told the same jokes that once made her snort wine out her nose. She didn't know I was there. Not yet. But I stood just far enough to see everything. The way she tilted her head, played with her necklace, brushed her fingers through her hair exactly 3 times. That was her move when she was interested. I'd seen it once before. On our second date. The man beside her? Young. Stylish. Cocky posture. Probably thought she was single. Probably thought he had a chance. He wasn't wrong. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. I wasn't supposed to leave the office early. Wasn't supposed to walk into that hotel lounge she always said she hated. Too pretentious, she'd claimed. But I guess she only hated it when I invited her. My wife. My Mallory. 3 nights earlier, we were sitting on the couch, me talking about our grocery budget, and she, eyes on her phone, looked up and said, "I'm not responsible for your happiness, Wes." Just like that. And maybe she thought I'd forget. Maybe she thought it didn't land like a knife. But it did. So when I watched her swirl her drink, when I watched her lean in toward him with the kind of warmth I hadn't felt in years, I realized something. She had stopped caring about my happiness a long time ago. I just hadn't stopped caring about hers. Until right then. That's the thing about quiet men. We absorb. We tolerate. We give the benefit of the doubt. Until one day we don't. And when I turned around and walked out of that lounge without saying a word, I didn't do it because I was afraid of confrontation. I did it because I knew something she didn't. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. The beginning of a very silent, very patient kind of storm. And she had no idea it was already raining. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the far edge of the bed, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing beside me, wondering how she could sleep so easily while I was unraveling in silence. Her makeup was still faintly on her face. Lipstick smudged just enough to make me wonder if she even bothered wiping it off. Maybe she didn't expect to come home to me. Maybe she didn't care. The next morning I made her coffee. Just like always. Cream, 2 sugars, cinnamon on top. She took it without looking up, murmured thanks, and walked off to the sunroom in her robe. I stood in the kitchen holding her empty mug from yesterday, staring at the faint lip stain left on the rim, bright red, not her usual soft rose. A color she used to say was too much for her. That detail stayed with me, and so did the fact that the mug smelled faintly of bourbon. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I didn't want an apology. I didn't want a fight. What I wanted was the truth. All of it. The quiet kind. The kind you find in deleted texts and second phones and girls' night out receipts. That evening, while she was soaking in a lavender bath she claimed was to recenter her energy, I went to our shared office and pulled out her old laptop, the one I gave her 2 Christmases ago for her e-commerce business that never launched. It had sat there, mostly untouched, under a pile of notebooks filled with affirmations and abandoned product ideas. But the thing about abandoned devices? People forget what they left behind. She hadn't wiped anything. Not even the browser history. At first, it was innocent Pinterest boards, email drafts, Instagram tabs of coastal retreats and healing retreats and overpriced pottery. But then I found the email account. Not her usual one. Not the one she used for work or family. This one was under the name L.M. Rivera. Rivera was her grandmother's maiden name. A detail I'd only heard once at a Thanksgiving dinner years ago. And this account? It was full. Photos. Reservations. Late-night poetry. Messages. To Jonas. I froze. I didn't know anyone named Jonas. The earliest messages dated back 6 months. Last night was everything. One of them read, "You make me feel real." Another, "He still doesn't notice anything. He's too busy making sure I'm comfortable." Like comfort is the same as passion. My hands were shaking, but not out of anger. Not even betrayal. Just emptiness. Hollow realization. Like I'd been sleepwalking through a fire, and only now smelled the smoke on my clothes. The laptop screen dimmed. My own reflection stared back at me in the dark monitor. Tired eyes. Wrinkled shirt. I looked like a man who'd been trying too hard for too long and didn't even realize no one was clapping anymore. I closed the laptop gently, and I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had clarity now. The one thing I'd begged for without knowing how badly I needed it. For once, I didn't feel crazy. I didn't feel overdramatic or sensitive or too much, like she always implied when I asked for affection. I had the truth, and I had a plan. I wasn't going to scream or storm out or post her pictures online. No, that would have made her the center of the story again. And I was done writing her as the main character. So I decided something. Quietly, like everything I ever did for her. I was going to stay. For a little while longer. But not as her husband. As her shadow. Watching. Listening. Collecting. Until the day I'd remind her that happiness goes both ways. That the silence she gave me wasn't emptiness. It was a pause before the shift. And when I'd finally leave, she wouldn't even realize how much she'd lost until the world stopped applauding for her too. 3 days passed before I even whispered the name Jonas out loud. And when I finally did, it wasn't in anger or panic. I simply stood in the bathroom, staring into the fogged-up mirror after my shower and said, "So, you're real." Like he could hear me. Like he was already in the house. During those 3 days, I continued the charade, smiling when she walked in the room, asking her how her bath was, pouring her wine just the way she liked it, ice cold, in that ridiculous stemless glass with the gold rim. She joked once that it made her feel like a queen. I used to love hearing her say things like that. Now it made me sick. But I wasn't going to flinch. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. So I kept digging. Her phone was untouchable, always on her. Even when she showered, it sat on the counter, screen down, notifications silenced. But her smartwatch, that was the crack in the armor. She took it off every night to charge it by her side of the bed. And one night, while she dozed off half listening to a podcast about reclaiming your feminine power, I picked it up, quiet as breath. No passcode. She never thought to lock the watch. It took less than 5 minutes to change everything I thought I knew. There were texts. Not many, just a few that had synced before she learned to scrub them out. Tomorrow kiss mark from Jonas. Same place. Can't wait to see you in that skirt again. That skirt. The one I'd complimented last week before she snapped, "Why are you looking at me like that?" As if my attention were offensive. Turns out it was only valuable when it came from someone else. But the worst wasn't the texts. It was the calendar. A recurring event. Creative coaching with Jay. Twice a week. Afternoons. Right after her wellness walks. I Googled it. There was no business by that name. No website. No social page. No reviews. It wasn't a coaching session. It was a cover. And suddenly all the pieces clicked together. The joggers she wore but never broke a sweat in. The way she'd come home glowing but insist she was just rejuvenated by nature. The fact that she always tossed her clothes in the washer the second she got home, even though she never used to care about laundry schedules. Jonas wasn't just real. He was local. Very local. I stayed up that night with a map of our area on my laptop, cross-referencing every place she mentioned in passing. Parks, cafes, yoga studios. I even checked her gas station receipts. One place came up more than once. Creston Park. Nothing remarkable. Just a quiet little green patch with picnic benches, a trail, and a view of the old water tower. The next day, I left work early. I didn't tell her. I didn't make up an excuse. I just left, drove to Creston Park, and parked in the corner lot under the faded maple trees. I sat in my car, engine off, heartbeat louder than the passing wind. At exactly 2:18 p.m., I saw her, walking fast, checking her phone, wearing that same olive skirt. And behind her, a man, tall, tanned, backward cap, rolled sleeves, grinning like a thief who knew the vault code. Jonas. They didn't kiss. Not yet. But they touched. Arm on shoulder. A brush of fingers. The kind of touch people use when they've already crossed the line and don't care anymore. I watched as they sat at a bench like it was theirs. She laughed louder than I'd heard in months, threw her head back, tilted toward him, all while I sat 20 feet away watching my marriage rot in real time. But I didn't cry. I filmed it. Not for revenge. Not for proof. Just for me. So I could finally stop doubting what I'd been feeling for years. That I'd been replaced. Erased. Quietly, politely, and with a smile. That night, when she came home smelling like pine and peppermint tea, I asked her how her walk was. She kissed me on the cheek. Invigorating. And I just smiled back. Because now I had everything I needed. Not to destroy her, but to disappear on my terms. The shift was so subtle. Even I barely noticed it at first. But it started the moment I closed my laptop and backed up the footage. It wasn't just about watching her betray me anymore. It was about reclaiming something I'd lost over the years. Myself. My time. My silence. My dignity. She still thought she had the upper hand. That I was just the background hum to her more exciting melody. And I played along. I still made the coffee. I still folded the laundry. But I wasn't really there. Not in the way she'd grown used to. She would talk and I would nod. She'd roll her eyes when I didn't react fast enough. And I'd apologize just a second too late. I stopped volunteering to go to the store. Stopped asking about her day. Stopped filling in the empty spaces in our conversations. Letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her glance up. Confused. But she never asked what was wrong. Not once. It was like she didn't want to know. Then came the first test. A Saturday. Normally we'd have lunch together, more out of routine than desire. But that morning, I told her I'd be heading to the hardware store. She barely looked up from her phone. Just said, "Sure, pick up that thing for the shower." I didn't go to the hardware store. I drove to a quiet coffee shop across town, where no one knew me. I sat in a corner booth with a notebook and pen, no laptop, no phone. Just me. And I wrote. I wrote about the day we met, the promises we made, the things I gave up to keep her world spinning. I wrote about the version of me that used to smile without effort, the version that thought love meant holding someone else up even when they let you fall. I wrote until my wrist cramped and the paper curled from the pressure. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a journal. It was a reckoning. I went back home hours later than usual. She was already dressed, purse over her shoulder, keys in hand. "Where've you been?" she asked casually, her tone somewhere between annoyance and boredom. I shrugged. "Just drove around." She stared at me like she was waiting for more, but I gave her nothing. Not even a lie. Just enough truth to make her uncomfortable. That night she tried something new. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I said I was tired and went to bed early. She stood there in the living room, popcorn in hand, frozen for a moment like she'd forgotten how to be alone in her own silence. I watched her through the crack in the door. Not out of spite, but curiosity. How long would it take for her to miss me? Not the things I did, not the comfort I gave, but me. 2 weeks passed like that. Me vanishing slowly, piece by piece. No confrontation. No accusations. Just absence. And it drove her crazy in the quietest way. She started asking questions. "Are you okay? Did something happen? Is it work?" I'd smile and say, "I'm fine." But fine meant something different now. Then one night, and this part I'll never forget, I came home to find her sitting on the couch in complete darkness. No TV, no music, no phone. Just her and a half-empty glass of wine. She didn't look up when I walked in. She just said, "You feel different. You don't look at me the same." I sat down across from her, letting the silence settle again. I didn't confirm it. I didn't deny it. I just let the weight of her own sentence echo in her mind. She sipped her wine, hands trembling just enough to betray the calm mask she was trying to wear. "Is there someone else?" she asked. I almost laughed. The irony was too rich, but I shook my head slowly. "No, but there used to be." She frowned. "Used to be." I leaned forward. "Yeah, you." And I left it at that. She didn't respond. She just stared, as if trying to find the right thread to pull to get us back to where we used to be. But she couldn't see that she'd already yanked too hard, too many times. And the fabric was ruined. That night, she crawled into bed quietly. No good night. No, I'm sorry. Just silence. The same silence I once dreaded. Now it felt like freedom. But I wasn't done yet, because I hadn't told her about Creston Park. Or Jonas. Yet, it happened on a Thursday, the kind of day where nothing stands out. Not the weather, not the sky, not even the noise outside. It was forgettable, unremarkable, which made what happened next all the more powerful. Because she never expected a day so ordinary to shatter everything she'd carefully kept hidden. It started with an envelope. Nothing dramatic. No glitter bombs or angry notes or flames licking the edge of betrayal. Just a plain manila envelope slid quietly under our front door while she was in the shower and I sat at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll through job listings. She didn't see who delivered it. I did. It was Jonas, wearing a jacket I'd seen before, driving the same silver sedan I watched him park near Creston Park. And he didn't see me, at least I don't think he did. He walked up, bent down, slid the envelope inside, and walked away like it meant nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. I didn't open it right away. I didn't have to, because this wasn't for me. It was for her. So I picked it up, placed it right in the center of the coffee table, and waited. When she came out of the shower, wrapped in that oversized towel with her wet hair dripping down her back, she barely noticed me. She walked past like she always did, assuming I had nothing important to say, that I was part of the furniture she never dusted. And then she saw it. Her footsteps slowed. Her hand dropped slightly from the towel. She tilted her head just enough for me to catch it. Confusion, hesitation, fear, all in one half-second breath. "What's this?" she asked. I shrugged. "It came for you." "From who?" "Jonas." That was the first time I'd ever said his name out loud. Her knees nearly buckled. She didn't think I knew. She never thought I'd dig. That I'd see her. Not like this. She laughed. Sharp. Nervous. Fake. "Wes, what are you even talking about?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because the envelope answered for me. She opened it, right there in front of me, maybe thinking it'd be something harmless. But her hands started trembling by the second page. There were photos, screenshots, messages, a copy of the receipt from the motel they used twice in June, the same weekend she said she was visiting her cousin for a healing retreat. I remembered because I had packed her travel diffuser and favorite pillow into the backseat while she reminded me not to forget my vitamins. "Did you go through my stuff?" she whispered, barely audible. "Did you expect me not to?" She dropped the pages. Literally dropped them like they were on fire. One fluttered to her foot. Her toe moved instinctively to cover it, as if hiding the evidence could erase it. It wasn't serious. "Don't insult me." Her face shifted then, from guilt to defense. That awful transition I'd seen before, the one where she tried to reclaim control, to twist the story before it fully left her grasp. "We haven't been happy in years, Wes. You've been distant, cold, uninvolved. Don't." I cut her off calmly but firmly. "Don't rewrite this to make me your excuse." The silence after that was the loudest moment we'd ever shared. She stood there, lips parted like she wanted to scream or sob or blame someone. But the weight of the evidence crushed every lie before it left her mouth. And then, finally, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "What now?" I leaned back in the chair. I could have said anything. Could have yelled, cursed, cried. But I was past all that. All I said was, "Now you find out what it feels like when your happiness doesn't matter anymore." And I got up and walked out of the room. Not out of the house. Not yet. But out of that moment. That dynamic. That script where I was the dependable fool begging for crumbs of love from someone who used me as a placeholder for a life she thought she deserved. She stayed frozen. Not chasing me. Not apologizing. Just quietly realizing that the man who once loved her enough to forgive anything was no longer in the room. And I knew then, the unraveling had finally started. But not mine. Hers. The morning after the envelope was opened, I didn't get out of bed first. That might not sound like much, but it was the first time in years. I always woke early, made coffee, folded her blanket on the couch, topped off the diffuser in the hallway with her favorite eucalyptus oil. But that morning, I stayed under the covers. Still, silent, letting the sunlight creep through the curtains like a truth she could no longer avoid. She walked past the bedroom twice before finally peeking in. "You're not going to work?" she asked. "No." Silence. "You feeling okay?" "Yeah." She hesitated in the doorway for a few seconds too long, like she didn't know what role to play anymore. The concerned wife? The defensive partner? The victim of her own unraveling? I didn't help her choose. I just stared at her the way someone stares at a stranger they vaguely recognize from a dream. Unsure, distant, a little haunted. She left for her creative space an hour later. No kiss, no goodbye. I didn't ask where she was going, and she didn't offer. But this time, I knew she wouldn't see Jonas. Because now, he had made his own statement, quietly walking out of her life the moment she lost control of the narrative. I'd learned that much from the rest of the texts I found later. Jonas was many things, but committed wasn't one of them. The second things got real, the second I didn't play dumb anymore, he bolted. Left her unread. Deleted the coaching calendar invites. Ghosted her like an unpaid invoice. She thought she had power. She thought the attention meant something. But she was just his escape, the way she once used to be mine. Over the next few days, I gave her nothing. No tension. No fights. No questions. And that drove her mad. She started lingering around me more. Asking if I wanted tea, if I needed help with the garden, if I wanted to try that new Thai place downtown. The same Thai place she once said was too heavy and gave her stomach cramps. Funny how betrayal rewires appetites. But I declined. Every time. Politely, kindly, indifferently. The tipping point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was folding laundry while watching a nature documentary. She walked in and sat beside me. Close. Too close. Like nothing had happened. "I know I messed up," she said softly. "I didn't pause the TV. You think. I didn't mean to hurt you, Wes. It just happened. We lost our connection. You stopped paying attention." I set down the towel I was folding and finally looked at her. "No," I said. "I kept paying attention. That was the problem. I noticed everything. The distance. The phone habits. The way you stopped laughing unless someone else was watching. I noticed it all. I just didn't want to believe it." She blinked, stunned that I wasn't collapsing under the weight of her carefully timed guilt. She tried again. "But I love you." "No, Mallory. You loved what I gave you. My silence. My predictability. My ability to make you feel important while I disappeared inch by inch. But that's over." She looked down at her hands. No tears. Just panic flickering behind her eyes. Realizing she had no script for this version of me. "I can fix this," she said. "You can't fix something you don't understand," I replied. "And I don't think you ever really saw me. Not for who I was. Just for who you needed me to be." We sat there in the thick, suffocating silence. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just honest. Brutally, quietly honest. She left the room after a few minutes. No words. No storming off. Just walking away, slowly, like she was finally carrying the weight she'd made me bear for years. That night I wrote a letter. Not a goodbye. Not yet. But a truth. My truth. I didn't write it for her. I didn't even write it for closure. I wrote it because for the first time in years, I remembered what my voice sounded like. And I knew in that moment she would never hear it again the same way. Because it no longer belonged to her. She found the letter the next morning. I'd left it neatly folded on the windowsill in the kitchen. Right beside the plant she always forgot to water but insisted on keeping. The envelope was unsealed. No name on the outside. I wanted her to wonder if it was meant for her. I wanted her to hesitate. And she did. She stared at it for 10 minutes. I watched from the hallway, concealed behind the archway like a ghost in my own home. Her fingers hovered over the envelope, pulled back, hovered again. She paced, poured herself half a glass of water she never drank, tapped her nails against the marble counter. She was afraid of it. Afraid of what it might say or worse, what it might not. When she finally opened it, I didn't move. I wanted her to read every single word in full silence. No interruptions. No manipulations. Just her and the truth. Mallory, there's no dramatic ending here. No screaming. No luggage on the porch. No broken dishes or shattered picture frames. Just this. A man who spent too long whispering into a void, waiting for an echo that never came. I want you to know that I remember everything. Not the fights, those blurred long ago. Not even the betrayal, that's just static now. I remember the quiet things. The way you used to lean into me in parking lots when the wind got cold. The way you'd cry when commercials showed old dogs or lost kids. The way you said my name when you were proud of me. There was a time I would have carried fire in my hands for you. There was a time I did. But you changed. And I stayed. And then I broke. And now I'm done staying. I'm done breaking. And I'm done trying to keep alive something that's been dead longer than either of us were brave enough to admit. So this is me quietly stepping away. Not from love. Not even from you. But from the version of myself that believed you'd ever return to me. When you said you weren't responsible for my happiness, you were right. That was never your job. But pretending you were still trying while I bled for both of us. That was your choice. And now I choose different. Wes, I could hear her breathing change halfway through. She sat down at the table like her knees had suddenly betrayed her. When she finished reading, she didn't cry. That would have required the kind of vulnerability I hadn't seen from her in years. What she did instead was sit in absolute stillness for nearly half an hour. Then, slowly, methodically, she refolded the letter and placed it back on the windowsill. As if maybe, if she left it where she found it, she could pretend none of it was real. But the cracks had already spread. That afternoon, I didn't come home for dinner. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't leave a note. I didn't check in. I had booked a room at a quiet in 3 towns over. A place with no TV, no Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just an old ceiling fan, a view of the lake, and the sound of unfamiliar silence. She messaged me 7 times. Called me 3. The messages ranged from confused to concerned to slightly frantic. Where are you? Are you okay? Can we talk? Please come home. I don't want this to end like this. But here's the thing about men like me, the kind who gave too much for too long. When we leave, we don't come back for closure. We've already given it to ourselves. The next morning, I sent her a photo. It wasn't of me. It was of the lake. A sunrise stretched across it like peace finally arriving on time. No caption. No explanation. Her reply came within minutes. So that's it. I didn't respond. Because yes, that was it. But there was still one final thing I hadn't told her. One final, silent revelation that would seal everything she thought she could still hold on to. And when she would find out, it wouldn't just end the marriage. It would rewrite the story she thought she was in. 3 days passed before I returned home. Not to move back in. I'd already packed my essentials during one of her yoga classes, but to collect the last few pieces that still carried my scent. A book she gave me before she stopped reading my words. A photo album buried behind her self-help journals. And my grandfather's watch, which had ticked quietly in our drawer for years while everything else around us fell silent. When I stepped through the door, the house was too clean. The kind of clean that isn't about pride but panic. As if scrubbing the baseboards could erase what was written in the walls. She sat at the kitchen island like a statue, pale. Hair brushed for the first time in days. Wearing that soft gray sweater I once bought her for a rainy weekend that never came. I nodded at her, said hello, and walked right past. No need for theater. Wes, she called out. Her voice was smaller now. Not the kind that pushed or cut, but one that wondered if it still mattered. I paused at the top of the stairs, turned slightly and said, I'm not here to hurt you. I know, she whispered. I'm just here to let you go. Finally. That was the last thing I said to her face. I drove away with the windows down. The wind felt new again. And that night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd finally stopped pretending it ever would be. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2. And in the space where her voice used to echo, something else grew. I joined a writing group at a local cafe. I started reading again. Not escape novels, but books that fed something inside me. I took walks in the evening, letting my thoughts settle without needing to untangle them. And one night, sitting on a park bench under a tired street lamp, I met someone. Not a replacement, not a rebound, just someone who listened. Her name was Elise. She didn't ask about my past, not right away. She just asked what I loved most as a kid. I told her about kites, the way they dance even when the wind seems still. She smiled and said, "You seem like someone who's finally remembering how to fly." And maybe I was, because this story doesn't end with destruction. It ends with rediscovery, with peace, with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that walking away doesn't mean failure, it means survival. And if you're watching this on Reddit Confessions, I want to ask you something. Was there ever a moment in your life when you realized someone had stopped seeing you, and you finally saw yourself again? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your story, because here, we believe that sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. Thanks for watching. And remember, your story matters too.